basketball court echoed with the sound of bouncing balls, but for 14-year-old Rachel, it wasn't the game that consumed her thoughts. The frigid night air bit at her skin as she sat in the back of their old, rusted minivan, clutching a worn-out basketball, the only piece of her father's memory that still felt alive. Tomorrow, a miracle had to happen. Her mother's condition was deteriorating fast, and Rachel was running out of time. She had a plan: find Michael Jordan, the man her father idolized, and hope beyond hope that his generosity could save them. What Rachel didn't know was that the basketball she held in her hands, faded, cracked, and covered in the signature of a man she barely remembered, would change everything. This wasn't just about basketball. It was about legacy. It was about promises that stretched across decades. Rachel's struggle and determination. Rachel Thompson had never known a life free from struggle. Her memories of a warm home, full of love and laughter, were slowly fading, overshadowed by the harsh reality of living on the streets. For months, her mother Emily and she had called the back of a rusted minivan their home. It wasn't much, just a small space tucked away in an empty parking lot, but it was their refuge from the world that had turned its back on them. Every morning, Rachel would wake up to the cold kiss of the outside air creeping in through the van's cracked windows. She'd pull her thin, worn blanket around her shoulders, feeling the chill settle deep into her bones. Her mother, always the fighter, would smile at her weakly as she prepared for another long day of work at a local diner. But Rachel knew the truth that her mother refused to acknowledge. Emily was getting sicker by the day. Her cough had deepened, her movements slower, and her face, once full of light, now carried dark circles that never seemed to fade. Rachel, though only 14, understood far too well the weight of their situation. She had learned how to survive in the cold, how to make the van feel like a home even when it wasn't. But it wasn't just survival she was after. No, Rachel dreamed of a future where she could bring her mother the warmth she deserved. A future where her father's memory, his love for basketball, his life lessons, his encouragement, wasn't lost to time but lived on through her actions. Her father's basketball, the one he had given her on her 10th birthday, was all she had left of him. It had been his prized possession, and the signature he had written across it was the last reminder she had of the man who had shaped her life. The basketball, now old and worn from years of use, had become more than just a game to Rachel. It was a connection to the past, a tether to a life she no longer knew. Every time she held it, she could almost hear her father's voice telling her, "Don't ever give up, Rachel. Life isn't about the shots you miss, but the ones you keep taking." Yet even with that constant reminder of her father's love, the weight of their circumstances pressed heavily on her. The fear of losing her mother, the anxiety of being homeless, the uncertainty of what tomorrow would bring, these were things Rachel carried every day. She had seen too many others on the streets, forgotten by society, and she feared that one day they would be just another pair of nameless faces in the crowd. But there was something inside of Rachel that refused to break. She had inherited her father's resilience. His voice echoed in her mind whenever the world seemed too heavy to bear. She remembered his words clearly. "It's not about where you are now, but where you're headed. Keep pushing. Don't let anything stop you." She knew that she could never give up, not on herself and not on her mother. They had each other, and that was enough to keep her going. Even when her stomach growled from hunger, even when she had to do her homework under the flickering streetlights because the library was closed or too far away, Rachel kept moving forward. She couldn't let herself stop. She wouldn't. Basketball had always been her escape, the one place where she could forget the cold, forget the hunger, forget the world that seemed indifferent to her suffering. At school, when the gym lights came on, Rachel would lose herself in the game, her movements a silent rebellion against the life she had been dealt. She wasn't just another homeless kid. She was Rachel Thompson, a girl with talent, a girl with a future, and a girl who wasn't going to let anything steal her dreams. But Rachel's greatest fear wasn't failure. It wasn't not making the basketball team or not having the best equipment. It was the fear of not being enough to save her mother, of not being able to pull her out of the darkness that was closing in. Her mother had given everything for her, and Rachel was determined to give everything back. But as the days wore on, she felt the weight of her world growing heavier. the light dimming from her mother's eyes and the path ahead becoming more uncertain. Rachel was on the edge of losing everything, her family, her home, her hope. But she wasn't ready to give up yet. She couldn't. She held onto that basketball with everything she had, determined that somehow, some way, she would find a way to turn their lives around. She didn't know how, but she knew that if she kept fighting, if she kept practicing, if she kept holding on to that piece of her father's love, she would find a way to bring hope back into their lives. This was more than just survival. This was about legacy. This was about never forgetting who she was and where she came from, no matter how hard life became. And Rachel knew that one day, somehow, that dream would lead her to a place where she could finally save her mother, and maybe, just maybe, save herself. The dream of basketball. For Rachel, basketball was more than just a sport. It was her father's legacy, a piece of him she could hold on to as the world around her crumbled. When she was younger, the game had been their shared language. Every dribble, every shot, every play was a conversation between father and daughter. Basketball wasn't just a pastime, it was the way they communicated their love for each other, the way they showed strength, resilience, and determination. Her father had taught her the fundamentals when she was just a little girl, patiently guiding her through every move with a calm voice that never wavered. "Eyes on the target, Rachel," he would say, his hands gently adjusting her stance, his smile wide and full of pride. It wasn't about perfection. It wasn't even about winning. It was about the journey. The way the game taught her to rise again after every fall, to push through the pain, and to keep her eyes on the bigger picture, even when things felt hopeless. But now, basketball was all Rachel had left of him. It was the one thing that remained, the one thing that still connected her to the warmth of her father's embrace, to the love he had poured into her life. Without it, she feared she would lose him forever. Every day, Rachel woke up with a single thought in her mind. Basketball was her ticket to something better. It was the one thing that could pull her out of the cold, the one thing that could give her a chance to show the world who she really was. She knew she was talented. She knew that if she could just find the right people to believe in her, everything could change. The basketball courts at her school were a sanctuary. They were the only place where Rachel could forget about her mother's illness, about the cold car they called home, about the hunger gnawing at her stomach. When she stepped onto that court, it was like everything else faded away. The court became her escape, a place where she could just be a girl who loved the game, who loved the feel of the ball in her hands, the swoosh of the net when her shot went in. But there was more to it than that. Basketball had become her silent rebellion. Every time she practiced, every time she made a shot, she was proving something to herself. She was proving that she could still rise, that she could still fight for her future, no matter how impossible it seemed. The game gave her purpose, and it gave her something to hold on to when the rest of her life felt like it was slipping through her fingers. In the quiet moments after practice, when the gym lights flickered off and the other kids had gone home, Rachel would stay behind. She would shoot basket after basket, her movements driven by the lessons her father had taught her. The cold air outside bit at her skin, but the warmth of the court, the rhythm of the game, kept her going. There were days when it felt like she would never be good enough, days when the pain in her hands from the endless practice was unbearable. But she never stopped. She couldn't. Every time her hands ached, she remembered her father's words. "Pain is temporary, pride is forever." Rachel's heart would tighten in her chest, her throat thick with unshed tears. She could still hear him, his voice like a whisper carried on the wind. She could still see the pride in his eyes when he watched her play, the way he would cheer her on from the sidelines, telling her that one day she would be more than just a girl from the streets, that she would be a force to be reckoned with. Basketball wasn't just a game, it was her salvation. It was her way of honoring her father, of carrying forward the legacy he had left behind. In those moments on the court, Rachel felt alive. She wasn't just a homeless girl who lived in a van, she was a basketball player. She was someone who could achieve greatness, who could rise above her circumstances and show the world that she mattered. Yet, as much as basketball filled her with hope, it also carried a heavy burden. The dream of playing for a real team, of having the proper shoes, the right uniform, the necessary equipment, seemed impossibly far away. How could she even think about playing for the school team when she barely had the basics? Her worn-out shoes, The faded basketball her father had signed, the torn-up clothes, these were the only things that defined her. Still, she held on to the belief that basketball was her way out. One day she would make it. She would be good enough to play professionally, to prove that a girl from a broken family, a girl who had nothing, could rise up and make her father proud. Every time she made a basket, every time she worked on her form, every time she heard the ball swish through the net, Rachel felt closer to that dream. She could hear her father's voice urging her on, telling her to keep practicing, keep working, keep believing. She would never let that dream go. Even in the darkest of times, when the world felt like it was closing in around her, basketball was the one light she could follow. It wasn't just about winning or losing. It was about survival. It was about hope. And as long as she had that basketball in her hands, she had everything she needed to fight for her future. The chance to meet Michael Jordan. It was the kind of news Rachel never thought she'd hear, a rumor that felt too impossible to be true. Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player of all time, the man her father had adored, the man whose games Rachel had watched with her father in the small, dimly lit living room before everything fell apart, was coming to their neighborhood. It was an announcement that seemed like a dream, but for Rachel, it was a beacon of hope. Her father had been a huge fan of Jordan, an admiration that had filled their home with stories of the Chicago Bulls' greatness, of clutch shots, championship victories, and the magic of his playing style. Rachel had grown up hearing stories about Michael Jordan's determination, his work ethic, his indomitable will to succeed. Her father would sit her down, smiling as he showed her videos of Jordan making impossible shots, breaking through barriers that no one thought could be broken. To her father, Michael Jordan wasn't just a player. He was a symbol of what could be achieved through grit, passion, and belief. Every game Rachel watched with him was more than just a game. It was a lesson. Look at the way Jordan moves, Rachel. He makes every shot with purpose. It's not about being perfect. It's about believing in yourself when no one else does. Her father's words echoed in her mind as if they were engraved on her soul. Now, here she was, living in a van with her mother, in the midst of a life that seemed determined to crush every dream she held. But Michael Jordan's name, still so familiar to her, represented a flicker of something more, a lifeline to the past, a dream that could somehow pull her out of this darkness. This was more than a celebrity appearance. For Rachel, this was a chance to reach out to the man her father had revered. Maybe, just maybe, Michael Jordan could help. Maybe he could see her, really see her, just like her father had always done. As the days passed, the reality of Michael Jordan's upcoming visit to the community center started to sink in. It was surreal, as if the universe had conspired to offer her one last chance, one last moment to grasp at the thread of hope that had been slipping through her fingers. Rachel didn't have much, but she had this: her father's signed basketball, worn from years of play, but still intact with the fading ink of his signature. This ball was the one thing she could offer, the only connection she had left to the father she had lost. She clutched it close to her chest, as if its presence might somehow make her worthy of that encounter. The thought of meeting Michael Jordan was overwhelming. Rachel's hands would tremble as she imagined the possibility of standing before him, of telling him about her father, about her struggles, about the life she and her mother were barely holding on to. She couldn't help but feel like it was a long shot, like she was reaching for something so far beyond her grasp. But her father had taught her never to stop trying. "You've got this, Rachel. If anyone can make it happen, it's you." As the date of the event drew nearer, Rachel's thoughts became consumed with the idea of meeting Michael Jordan. She imagined what she would say, how she would introduce herself, how she would explain that her father had always believed in him. She pictured herself telling Jordan about her mother's illness, about their life in the van, and how the one thing that kept her going was the game he had loved so much. It was the only thing she had left of him, the only thing she could hold on to when the world felt so empty. Every moment of her life seemed to lead to this opportunity. She had practiced endlessly, not just for the school team, but for this, the moment when she could finally show Michael Jordan that she was more than just a girl from the streets. She was the daughter of a man who had looked up to him, a girl who had learned how to be strong in the face of adversity, a girl who had a dream that was big enough to reach the sky. But with that hope came a deep, paralyzing fear. What if it wasn't enough? What if, despite everything, Michael Jordan didn't see her? What if he didn't believe in her? What if, after all this time, all this effort, the door remained closed? Rachel had spent her entire life fighting against the tide of hopelessness, but now, standing on the edge of this moment, she wondered if she was ready to face it. Still, she couldn't turn back. The thought of her mother, her strength diminishing day by day, made Rachel's heart ache. The knowledge that if she didn't act now, her mother might never get the help she needed spurred her on. This wasn't just about meeting Michael Jordan anymore. This was about more than just a dream of playing basketball. It was about saving her family. It was about keeping the promise she had made to her father to never give up, no matter. As the day of Michael Jordan's visit arrived, Rachel found herself pacing in their van, her stomach a knot of nerves. Her mother, though weak and frail, still managed a faint smile as she tucked her hands under the blanket. "You're really doing this? Huh?" Emily whispered. Rachel smiled back, though her heart raced. "Yeah, I have to." With that, they left the van and made their way to the community center. The crowd was already swelling by the time they arrived, a sea of faces all hoping to catch a glimpse of the man who had inspired millions. Rachel stood at the edge of the crowd, clutching her father's basketball, her body trembling with anticipation. She was just one face in a crowd of hundreds. But to Rachel, this moment held everything. She wasn't just a homeless girl in a line. She was a daughter, carrying her father's legacy, hoping against hope that somehow Michael Jordan would recognize that legacy and offer her the chance she had been dreaming of. The connection with Michael Jordan. The crowd was overwhelming. The air was thick with excitement and anticipation, a mixture of people clamoring for their chance to meet Michael Jordan, to hear a word from the legend who had inspired millions. The sounds of chatter filled the air, but Rachel couldn't hear any of it. Her heart pounded in her chest as she stood at the edge of the crowd, clutching the basketball that had once belonged to her father, when her mind raced, but she couldn't calm the storm inside her. Her mother, though exhausted, stood beside her, clutching her coat tighter against the biting cold. Emily's fragile hands were trembling slightly, but she forced a smile, as always, trying to reassure Rachel. It was the same smile she had worn for months, always hopeful, always trying to convince Rachel that everything would be okay. But Rachel saw through it. She could hear the deepening coughs that had started to dominate her mother's breathing, could see the exhaustion that had set in behind her bright eyes. They had come this far together, but now Rachel knew they were standing on the precipice of something far beyond what they had ever imagined. This was the moment that could change everything. This was the moment she had worked for, dreamed of, prayed for. As she stood in line, Rachel's mind raced back to the many nights spent in the van with her father's basketball in her lap, the only thing that made her feel close to him. The years of practice on empty courts under the dull light of street lamps. The hours spent mastering every shot her father had taught her, had all led her to this one opportunity. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. "If you want something bad enough, Rachel, you've got to go after it with everything you've got. Don't ever let anyone tell you that you're not good enough." And now, as she clutched the ball close to her chest, she felt the weight of those words. It wasn't just a ball anymore. It was a piece of her father's soul, a symbol of everything he had taught her, everything she was trying to carry forward in the face of the overwhelming odds stacked against her. The line moved slowly, but Rachel felt like time had come to a complete standstill. The closer they got to the front, the more her heart thudded in her chest. She could feel the tension building inside her, like an electrical current running through her veins. What if she wasn't enough? What if Michael Jordan didn't even look at her, didn't even acknowledge her father's basketball? What if she was just another girl in the crowd, another face among so many others? But as she and her mother stepped closer to the front, something shifted. The crowd, which had been pushing and jostling for position, suddenly parted as if in slow motion. There, standing at the front, was Michael Jordan himself. He had entered the room with the calm of someone who had been here 1,000 times before, but there was something magnetic about his presence, something that made every other voice fall silent. Rachel's breath caught in her throat as he walked toward her. He was larger than life, the very embodiment of everything her father had admired. His iconic Air Jordan sneakers, his confident yet humble stride. It was like standing before a hero, But it wasn't just the man who stood before her. It was everything he represented. He was the embodiment of her father's dreams, her father's belief in the impossible, her father's love for the game of basketball. For a brief moment, Rachel hesitated. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but now that it was here, she found herself frozen, unsure of what to say, unsure if she even had the right words to explain the weight of her request. But then Michael Jordan stopped in front of her. He looked down at the basketball she was holding in her hands, and his expression changed. His eyes softened, and there was a flash of recognition. It was a brief, fleeting moment, but Rachel could see it. He knew that ball. He knew it wasn't just any basketball. He knew it was something precious, something significant. "Is that your father's?" Michael Jordan asked, his voice low, carrying the weight of understanding. There was something in his tone that made Rachel's heart surge with emotion. She nodded, barely able to speak. "Yeah," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "It's the only thing I have left of him." Jordan's gaze never left the basketball, his eyes tracing the faded signature on the surface. "Love you forever, champ," the words her father had written to her. Those words that had carried her through every difficult night, every moment of doubt. And now, Michael Jordan, the man her father had admired, was standing before her, looking at the same signature, the same memory that she held so dear. "I can see it," Jordan said softly. "Your dad was a big fan of the game, and it looks like he passed that love on to you." Rahel felt a lump form in her throat as she fought to hold back the tears. It was like a dream, a moment that she had never thought would come true, but here it was, right before her eyes. Michael Jordan, the man who had inspired her father, was now recognizing her, seeing her for who she was, not just a girl who had lost everything, but a girl who had something valuable inside of her, something her father had instilled in her. "You've got talent," Jordan continued, his voice steady and confident. "I can see it in the way you hold that ball, but more than that, I can see your heart. Your dad was right about you. Keep working, keep pushing." Rachel's heart soared. Her hands trembled as she held the basketball out toward him. This wasn't just a meeting, it was a turning point. It wasn't just about asking for help. It was about proving to herself that she had the strength, the resilience, and the heart to make it. She wasn't just a girl who had lost everything. She was a girl with a future. A future that had just been made a little brighter by a single, powerful connection. As Michael Jordan reached out and took the basketball from her hands, something shifted inside Rachel. The weight of the world, the crushing despair, the uncertainty. Somehow it all seemed a little lighter. For the first time in a long time, Rachel believed that things could get better. In that moment, as Michael Jordan looked at her with understanding and admiration, Rachel realized something. She had just taken the first step toward fulfilling the promise her father had made to her long ago. And in a way, Michael Jordan had just helped her take that step. The fulfillment of a promise. In the days that followed, everything changed. Rachel could hardly believe what had just happened. Michael Jordan, the living legend, had not only acknowledged her, he had seen her. He had understood the depth of her struggle, recognized her resilience, and affirmed her worth. His words echoed in her mind every day. "You've got talent. Keep working. Keep pushing." It wasn't just the moment of meeting him that changed everything. It was what came next. Rachel never expected anything more than a handshake, a brief acknowledgement of her father's memory, and a smile. But Michael Jordan's actions went far beyond that. Her mother, Emily, had been growing sicker by the day. The coughs were more persistent now, the pale face growing thinner with each passing week. Their life had been reduced to survival, finding a place to sleep at night, scraping together what little money they had and praying that tomorrow would bring something better. But when Rachel and Emily returned home after the event, they found a letter waiting for them. It was from Michael Jordan's foundation. The letter was short, but its impact was immeasurable. It was a promise fulfilled. Michael Jordan had arranged for Emily to receive medical treatment at one of the best hospitals in the area. The funds would cover everything: the tests, the doctor's fees, the medications that Emily desperately needed. For the first time in months, Rachel allowed herself to breathe. The crushing weight of fear had lifted, even if just for a moment. Her mother would get the help she so desperately needed. Rachel sat there, holding the letter in her hands, feeling the reality of it all sink in. It wasn't just financial support. It wasn't just about giving them what they needed in the moment. It was about Michael Jordan seeing them not as charity cases, but as people who mattered. "You've got talent. Keep working." Those words kept running through her mind, like a mantra she could now believe in. For Rachel, the promise wasn't just about the money for medical bills. It was about the belief that someone who didn't have to care, someone who was at the top of the world, had chosen to care about them. It was about someone like Michael Jordan, understanding what it meant to carry the weight of the past, to hold on to the memory of someone you loved and lost, to keep fighting even when the odds seemed insurmountable. Rachel realized that it wasn't just about basketball. It was about how you carried your legacy forward, how you gave back to the world that helped shape you. And that's what Jordan had done for her, not just by writing a check or offering a few kind words, but by giving her the opportunity to believe again. He had reminded her of something her father had always told her. It's not about where you are now, but where you're headed. Rachel had spent so much time focused on surviving, on the immediate struggles of each day, that she had lost sight of the bigger picture. Meeting Michael Jordan had reminded her of the importance of believing in the future, of never giving up on her dreams, no matter how impossible they seemed. With the support for her mother's treatment in place, Rachel was able to focus on her own future. She returned to the basketball court, but this time there was a different energy in her. It wasn't just about shooting hoops in the cold anymore. It wasn't about escaping her reality. It was about stepping into her destiny. As the weeks passed, Rachel's life began to shift. Her mother's health improved slowly but steadily, and Rachel found herself attending basketball clinics, being mentored by coaches who recognized her potential. The local community, who had once ignored her, now saw her for the talented player she was. It wasn't just about basketball anymore. It was about the strength of her spirit, the drive to succeed, and the desire to honor her father's memory. One evening, after a particularly intense practice, Rachel sat down by herself at the edge of the court, her basketball at her side. The sky was turning purple with the fading light, and the last few players were leaving for the night. Rachel wiped the sweat from her brow, her heart still racing from the drills. She pulled out her father's basketball and looked at the faded signature, "Love you forever, champ." Tears welled up in her eyes as she traced his name, still so vivid in her mind. "Dad," she whispered softly, "we're making it. You always said I could, and now I'm starting to believe it." Rachel had spent so long feeling like she was chasing a dream that was just out of reach, but now she understood. The dream wasn't just about playing basketball. It was about living a life of purpose, about carrying forward the lessons of her father, about making a difference for those who needed it most. Michael Jordan had fulfilled a promise, one that stretched far beyond the tangible help he had given. He had shown Rachel that hope could be found in the most unexpected places. He had taught her that when you carry the legacy of those who came before you, you don't just hold on to it. You share it with the world. You give back. You lift others up, just as they lifted you. In the end, Rachel realized that this wasn't just a story about basketball. It was about family, legacy, and the promise we keep, even if it takes years to fulfill. Her father's memory, her mother's love, and Michael Jordan's generosity had shown her that no matter how hard life gets, there's always a chance to rise again. And with that belief, Rachel's life changed forever. She was no longer just a girl from the streets. She was a force to be reckoned with, a young woman carrying the hopes of her father, her mother, and the community that had come to support her. She was a reminder to herself and to everyone around her that no dream is too big, no obstacle too insurmountable, and no promise ever forgotten. Rachel's story teaches us a profound lesson, that hope can be found in the most unexpected places, and sometimes the greatest acts of kindness come from those who understand the power of legacy, belief, and generosity. It's easy to feel lost when life doesn't seem to be going our way, but Rachel's journey reminds us that persistence, strength, and the love of those we care about can carry us through even the darkest times. No matter where we start or what we face, we all have the power to rise again, as long as we never give up on our dreams. Just like Rachel, we all have something valuable to offer, whether it's our talents, our heart, or simply the hope we share with others. By embracing the support of those who care and offering the same support in return, we can build a better future, no matter the obstacles in our path. If you are moved by Rachel's journey and the lessons of perseverance, legacy, and the power of hope, we'd love for you to join our community. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us about a time when hope helped you overcome adversity, or if you've experienced a moment of unexpected kindness that made all the difference. We'd love to hear your stories and connect with you on this journey of inspiration and growth. Together, we can lift each other up and keep pushing forward. Stay strong, keep dreaming, and remember, no promise is ever too far out of reach. Subscribe and comment now, and be part of the community that believes in the power of hope and perseverance.